This podcast is part of the Treksphere Network.
To find more Star Trek-related content, visit Treksphere.com. There's nothing wrong with your stream. Do not attempt to adjust the sound. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the audio. We can change the focus to a soft blur. For the next hour, or 40 minutes-ish, sit quietly, and we will control all that you hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your stream. You are about to participate in a podcast. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches the measures of the universe to the measure of an episode. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. Is this our new thing? Are we doing that one now?
No, that's the Outer Limits. Yeah, so each week we discuss a randomly generated episode, and we decide whether or not it is proper Star Trek or just an Outer Limits episode.
I guess it is, or some just 80s horror movie.
Yeah, that ends on a cliffhanger that never ends.
And I'm Paul, and the criteria by which we judge these episodes, number one, is there science fiction embedded or explored in the plot? Number two, is this science fiction novel or unique in some way? And number three, is there a ethical or moral dilemma explored throughout the episode? I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this week?
I know, I'm getting there.
Oh.
I was just leaving the pause. And this week we watched Conspiracy, episode 24 of season 1 of The Next Generation. And the blurb says, after diverting to a secret meeting with an old friend and some of Starfleet's finest commanders, Captain Picard finds the USS Horatio destroyed. Which is weird, because that's like the first act of this episode.
Well, it's the incident that essentially pushes Picard over the ledge of wanting to explore why this is a thing, why there's this conspiracy happening. And they kind of give that away. And the whole mystery that they actually stretch out in the episode later on in the first act of, we've come across all of this debris in space. What is it? We don't know. But this is very bizarre. Let's spend some time on this. And then they're like, oh, it can be none other than the Horatio.
Right.
And so they kind of spoil that a little bit.
Which, well, I mean, I thought it was interesting that they just assumed, they're like, it can be nothing else but the USS Horatio. Even though the debris was so destroyed, they couldn't figure out anything. But we are getting way ahead of ourselves. Yeah.
It starts when they're en route to the worst scene, or I should say the best scene in Star Trek Season 1-ness. This is this scene completely embodies why everybody hates the first season. And
I mean, the whole scene is just what am love?
Yeah.
Am data love?
Yeah. The whole scene. So they're going to Pacifica, which maybe they hadn't invented Risa yet.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why.
And it's an ocean world that Bruce Willis visits in The Fifth Element. And they have this whole scene where Geordi's telling a joke to Data, and Data gets to do his I am a robot thing, and he's going to laugh. And then somebody makes a joke to Worf, where Worf, they say, do you like swimming, Worf? And he's like, no, it's too much like bathing. And every single thing that it's done, I mean, there's no records of a beard yet. Another reason why people don't like the first season.
Right.
And even the later stuff with Data, it's just this thing where everybody's the one-dimensional character, and we have to harp on them for a whole opening scene. And you could cut this whole scene out, and it wouldn't matter.
Right.
You could just received the Order 66 from Walker and wake Picard up with a blinking light. It's like, this sucks.
So we barely spend any time with Data in this episode. He has 4 instances where he does not understand what people are talking about.
He is a robot. Did you know that?
It was just being bombarded with it, because even the computer. This is the only time that computer references as a first person. But he does it to the computer when he's like, I was talking to myself, and the computer was like, I didn't catch what you said, and he's like,
and it's the same joke.
Yep.
That they just did with Riker.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, this episode was all about. The series is about shutting Worf down, but this episode was about shutting Data down.
Yeah, and so I have a friend who is doing. He's trying to embark upon watching Star Trek, and I said, for the first time in my life, I would have never even thought about saying to somebody, but I told him, skip the first season.
No,
skip it.
No.
And I would never say that. But he's on the ledge of whether or not he thinks it's good. And if I want him to continue to really enjoy Star Trek for what it is, he's going to give up after the first couple of episodes of season 1. Because it's unless you're really super into it, you're not gonna tolerate it.
But here's the thing: season 1 and 2 make season 3 what it is.
It's just a sacrifice we're gonna have to.
I know. I understand what you're saying. Like, if he's already sitting on the edge, he's probably not going to go any farther. I get it, but he just won't appreciate season 3 as much because he won't get some of the references. I mean, now he might, if you wanted to do the legwork, you could tell him, before you watch this episode in season 3, you should watch this episode in season 1, so he can get through season 2 first, and then kind of bounce back and forth between seasons 1 and 3, so he appreciates season 3 a little bit better.
I don't know. I think giving him a diagram of instructions on how to watch the show, I don't. I mean, I think if you got through with season 2 and enjoyed it, and knew that it's just going to get better and better, and so you have a little bit of that wind at your back, then maybe you could say, okay, then go back after season 2 and watch season 1. And then you'll have all the information you need to truly enjoy season 3, which is, season 3, season 4, peak NextGen, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe 5.
I think season 4 has the most amount of quality Star Trek quality episodes.
That's one data point that we're not measuring. In the course of a show, the run of a show, which season has the most proper Star Trek episodes versus not? Oh, we got to do that too. Damn
it's going to take a while, but I think that we should probably wait until we have at least half of a season up. Well,
that's like 13 years. Or no, 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've already watched a third of season 1 of Next Generation. Obviously, Troy had her moment with swimming in moonlight, and Data was like, how could you swim in moonlight? When they're traveling, Riker says how long to get there, and he says 22 hours, 15 minutes. And Riker goes, all right, increase to warp 6. And Geordi goes, aye, sir, full impulse.
Oh, yeah. What does that mean?
It's absolutely an editing mistake. But yeah, they kept it in. So Geordi's just off doing his own thing.
Aye, sir, full stop.
Steady as she goes. Right, sir. Engaging warp 9.
It's just everything is nonsense on the bridge. Right. Everybody goes where they want to go.
So Picard wakes up, but one of the things that I really liked about this moment is he legitimately sounds like he's just waking up. I don't think I've really seen that anywhere else. He's got the raspiness in his voice when he first responds.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
Right.
He's good at that stuff. I wonder if he had to scream into a pillow for a while to kind of get that thing going.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you believe it. He even takes a little cup of water and pours some of the water into another little cup and drinks it.
Yeah, that's totally what I do when I first wake up.
He took the same size cup of water, poured it into another same size cup, and then drank from the new cup.
I must have looked away. I didn't even see that. Okay.
It wasn't like a big pitcher of water or something. It
right.
was the regular size cup of water.
Oh, that's way too much water.
And he did like the acting thing where you have to do this 20 times so you can't drink a lot of water. So he's going to take like a baby-sized sip that nobody ever takes of anything.
Well, maybe it's a self-chilling cup and you have to drink it. You have to sip it because it's so... I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to drink ice-cold water first thing in the morning.
You might die from how cold it is.
Yeah. It's like drinking vodka straight out of the freezer. Like, you cannot do it.
So many questions.
It's just vodka. That's what it is. That's why he's sipping.
That is true. I've never tried that because you can't drink water directly out of the freezer because
it's ice.
It's called something else. Yeah.
Never
thought of that. Huh. I'll have to go try that now.
Well, yeah, it's below. It's a below freezing liquid. And
it doesn't freeze at the same temperature as water does.
Right. Sorry. It's colder than the temperature of ice. And so
which is awesome.
Right. So if you can put it in your mouth probably, and like it will hurt.
I never thought about this. You're so right. Because normally things that come out of the freezer are inedible.
Right.
At least immediately.
Well, they're edible. They're not drinkable.
Well, even then. But you're right. Oh, that's something I really want to try because I'll probably harm myself. But
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
so you learn something new every day on The Measure of an Episode.
Right. All right, let's see what we're watching next. We just get to the learning point in our episodes, and that's where we stop.
Well, I'm so torn about this episode because the first half of it was super interesting because there's a lot of science fiction procedural happening. Like when Picard comes in and says, we're rerouting to Daedalus B and don't ask me any questions, don't log this down, don't tell anybody, pinky swear. And then he says, let me know when we get there. And then he orders, I guess Riker said to Data, what's with Daedalus B? Why are we going there? Let's look it up. They have this whole sort of section of the first part of the show where they're looking up stuff about this planet, which ultimately is insignificant. It doesn't matter.
Right.
This planet does not matter at all. It's just a place for them to meet.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I love that they were trying to figure out, okay, why are we going here? Maybe we need to educate ourselves. And so they go into it, and they're like, there's nothing. I mean, it's just a silly planet.
Right. We did all that research for nothing.
I know.
Yeah.
And I liked that. That's sort of the science fiction-y part of this episode for me. Not sure about the rest of it, but we can get there.
Well, I also feel like, I mean, I guess spoiler alert, but mind-controlling aliens is pretty sci-fi.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. We'll get there.
We have to discuss that one.
Well, because I see what you're doing. I mean, we have Troy, who is not mind-controlling, but telepathic. Mind something. It's not just technology. She is an alien, and she is somebody who has seemingly telepathic abilities. Although it's never proven that she can do anything.
Well, she was originally. I've seen this a couple times now recently, and I don't know why or where, but she was originally supposed to be telepathic, and this is kind of why she's on the sidelines for the first season, at least the first half of it, because the writers didn't know what to do with her because she was so powerful being telepathic, and that was why.
And it's not very science fiction to just read people's minds. It needs to be minimized. Well,
and I mean, you know, it's their alien species. That's what they're able to do. But it's so, it's such a cliche. You know, it's just that aliens can read minds. Like that's how we know they're advanced. They're able to do that. And so it does give it a little bit more of a unique spin by making her an empath of being able to feel emotions, which she does in this episode. She can tell that somebody's holding a secret. That's right. When they do the conference meeting later on, she's like, somebody's holding a secret, but I can't tell, but I don't know who.
Which is her comment about everybody. Everybody.
So true.
Which is true about anybody anyway.
Right.
He's holding something back. He's like, yeah. Not everybody just says everything that they mean immediately during a telephone call.
Wait, what are you guys doing? I'm sensing confusion from him.
I mean, telephone calls don't start with, all right, you ordered this sector. I'm cheating on my wife. I'm very hungry right now. You know, like they don't just start dumping things. And so, yes, you're holding some things back because we've developed these social skills over time.
Right. So when Picard beams down to the planet, I like where Picard says, I'm beaming down, and Riker says something like, do you want an away team, or, you know, do you want anyone to go with you? And he just barks back, hello, number one. Like
a little bit of Dick Geordie going on there. It's like, well, that escalated quickly.
Right.
Just a question, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, I was doing my job.
So he goes down, he beams down to the planet, and he has this kind of interesting exchange where everybody's super paranoid, and they have to do this sort of back and forth to confirm that Picard is actually Picard. In
a really cool way, I thought. You know,
it was cool.
The guy was asking him questions that assumed a knowledge about his history that was false. You know, he's like, you're right, my brother did. And he's like, what? You don't have a brother. You have two sisters.
See, if it were me, though, I'd be like, oh, shit, I forgot he had a brother.
Right, absolutely. Yep.
That would be totally me, especially because this is the first time we're seeing any of these people, which kind of subverted the whole idea of trust. Because you can tell us how much you trust these people a million times. If they're brand new, we're always going to suspect them.
Right. Yeah.
And that was kind of a problem.
So the note that I had about this conversation was like everything that they talked about, it would have been so cool if those things had been referenced or seen in previous episodes. Because they were completely inconsequential. You know, just mentioning like, just in the daily briefings or something that like this person got promoted to admiral, you know, and Riker was like, really? He hasn't been in command long, or something like that. Making it part of the character dialogue that always happens in the opening scenes, but then actually have it pay off in a way like this. Like, remember that person who got promoted? Like, and Picard was like, yeah, that did seem strange.
Well, and the funny thing is that they did have that one character who Riker said, "Oh, I'm not very happy about seeing that guy," and they referenced that we've seen him before, but they don't have any characters really to reference that aren't on the ship,
right?
Because they just haven't laid any groundwork yet,
right?
I feel like this episode as a whole, where they're trying to lay groundwork, obviously. This scene makes a lot more sense, where they're sort of talking to each other on this strange planet, and they're telling Picard there's this whole conspiracy. In terms of it being a episode that is self-contained, it doesn't make a lot of sense that they spent this much time on this section.
Right.
It feels like, oh, this is a movie. This is how much time you'd spend on this in a movie. Mm-hmm. Not when you have half the amount of time to establish something. So clearly they were trying to lay groundwork for something that never materializes.
Absolutely.
For some reason. Do you know anything? Is there any trivia about why they never went this way? I mean, I kind of can speculate why.
What's your speculation?
My speculation is that this was too close to the movie. There's a movie where this happens. I don't know if they're connected.
Right. The one where the like gets put in Chekhov's ear.
Right.
Yeah.
And then people explode. And there's crazy things. And so I thought, I don't know which came first. I'm suspecting that the original series movie came first. But why would they go down the road of doing something we've already seen them do? It's too familiar.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. I think it was just a matter of how the edits and the rewrites went, and I don't think that they realized that was the case, because originally it was going to be just a straight conspiracy. And one of the tenets that Gene Roddenberry put in place was that everyone had to get along on the bridge. Like, the conflict did not take place within the crew. And Starfleet is it's the goal, it's the end goal for humanity. And so he, when they wanted to have a genuine conspiracy within Starfleet, Roddenberry shut it down. He was like, you cannot have it just be a conspiracy. There has to be some outside influence that is causing the conspiracy. So that's kind of where the idea of the insects came in.
I feel like that was such a Band-Aid thing to do. They could have made it some sort of infiltration of aliens that didn't result in a nightmare puppet.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and that's ultimately what happened with DS9 with the Dominion and the changelings.
Nightmare puppets?
Well, CGI puppets, but yes. Can you have a CGI puppet? That's not possible.
They call them puppets, I think.
Do they? Okay.
Because they have to rig them in special ways where maybe they call them, maybe not anymore. I don't know.
Right.
Well, they did have Yoda, who in the prequels eventually was CG, but still being made to at least in some way resemble the puppet of Yoda. Right. That's all I can think of. That's the only example.
And then as far as like the actual insects and what the goal was, originally the story was just supposed to end. They were going to defeat it, but they felt it was a little bit too cut and dry, and so they added the cliffhanger with it being a homing beacon. And with that being added, the idea was that it was actually the insects were the Borg. But when they started to when they decided that the Borg were insects, or not insects, human hybrids,
right.
That's when that idea was scrapped, and so
good call. The Borg are way more interesting than these insect things.
Yeah.
It's funny when it gets down to it at the end of the show, we're going to skip ahead here a little bit, where it's just stop motion little creatures rolling around on the ground and crawling into people. Mm-hmm. It just reeked of 80s kind of B horror, that kind of feeling. It's just like not great special effects, not great production value. And I could see people liking this for the same reason people like to go back and watch B horror movies today, is that, oh, this is kind of so bad it's good in a way. Because it seemed so poorly put together that they could have done it. I mean, it was creepy and I think satisfyingly creepy, I guess, in a way. But I kind of forgot that I was watching a Star Trek show.
Near the end there, when all the insects were like crawling out of the people's mouths and going into the...
Out of people's mouths, and how graphic that last thing is where they just destroy the alien. I mean, they don't even... Why would they destroy it? Why wouldn't they try and incapacitate it and talk to it? I mean, that seems very un-Star Trek to just like have this graphic moment where they carve a hole out of this guy's chest, and there's this Muppet in there that's like, meh! You know, it's like, geez, what show is this?
Right. Well, and I like that Picard in his closing monologue, like just briefly mentions he's like, our whole point is to make contact with new life, and it's a shame when we have to like destroy it.
Did you have to destroy
it? Right,
it?
like
you didn't have to.
They're saying like we mean you no harm, you know, and it's like, well, then why not hear them out? Like maybe they didn't know that they were taking over their minds, and you know they. Well,
in Picard's defense, he was snacking on the guy's aorta. You know, like it wasn't like we mean you no harm. I guess except for this guy.
Right. Well, right, but like that's kind of what I'm saying. Like have the conversation with Rennick or whatever his name was to find out what their end goal is, you know, like, you know, or is this like Mars Attacks where the aliens are saying like, you know, we come in peace, we mean you no harm, only to blast everybody out of the sky.
Yeah, it wasn't clear why they cared. They have a whole universe. It's not like we were battling for land somewhere.
Right.
You could have stayed in your sector. And the only kind of insight we got to that was they felt that they were a superior race or superior life form.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's it.
Yeah.
Like, did they just want to exterminate all other life? And that was kind of what their goal was. It wasn't clear.
Right.
And maybe it was not clear on purpose because they thought there were going to be more episodes about this. But I'm kind of glad it died.
So going back a little bit, there's a scene where Quinn is he's beaming up and he opens the suitcase and we see the insect for the first time, and then Rennick or whatever his name was comes in and talks to the Admiral, and the Admiral responds. You know, they have a conversation as if the Admiral is in command, and just a different direction would have been really neat if we didn't see the insect at that point. We just saw the suitcase, and Rennick comes in and talks to the Admiral, and the Admiral responds as if Rennick has a higher authority than the Admiral does, because Rennick was the one where the Hive Queen was. Okay. You know, so it would have kept the mystery going if this Admiral is talking to this ensign essentially, and the ensign has more authority than the Admiral does in this conversation. You know, it's like, well, why is that why is that taking place?
Yeah, I mean, it was very light on conspiracy once it got down to it. The first half of this episode was a mystery.
Yeah.
Why is all of this happening? And the second half is just them kind of thumbing around, and like nothing progresses in terms of what their goal is, or it's just a matter of kind of chasing the fact that we know Picard's in danger, and now maybe they have that kind of jump scare where the Doctor is talking to Picard, and then Riker puts his hand on her shoulder, and that's where it cuts.
Right. Yeah,
we don't know what's happening, and it's unclear at the end because they look at the back of Riker's neck, confirming that he's not faking, and he's got that gill thing back there. And I thought, okay, was that just some sort of sophisticated makeup that they put on Riker so he could pretend that would go unseen?
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
They said that. Either Crusher or Riker said it after. I think Riker told Picard that.
Oh, I must have missed that. Oh, Riker's like high kicking contest or high kick fight with the Admiral guy, where apparently they don't punch anymore. It's just high kicks to the face. That's the only way we can incapacitate people from now on.
And so many stunt doubles.
Yeah. You mean the 80-year-old wasn't high kicking Riker in the face?
Well, and you can even see the stunt doubles in this. You know, both because of the HD, but also just because they're very obviously not the same person.
Well, and to speak further to the whole conspiracy thing, it doesn't make sense that the alien old guy,
Quinn,
that he would just start beating people up.
Right.
Why all the subterfuge if you're just going to start kicking people when you come on board?
Right. Yeah. Like, I actually had a note about that, and also I love how Quinn had no time for discussing anything with LaForge. Like, he just immediately shoves him through the door.
It kind of it just breaks apart at the end.
Yeah.
If you've worked so hard for years trying to infiltrate the Federation, and now you just start kicking people.
Yeah. Well, and then he defeats Worf, because that's what happens with Worf. Worf is there to show how tough he is and then get beaten up.
Yeah. Always gets his ass whooped.
And then he starts to leave, and Crusher's just standing there with a phaser. Like...
Right. Yeah. It doesn't. It's sort of thrown together, right?
Well, and then LaForge had the action hero one-liner. Did you hear that? If I could see, I'd be seeing stars.
If I could see, yeah. Right. Yeah. Very clever.
But
we had forgotten that you wear a thing, so I'm glad that you reminded us.
It's very subtle. And then later on too, like he had a line where he talks about how he was thrown, and he gave the sentence such a weird emphasis. He goes, "He tossed me like a rag doll."
He clearly never heard the expression before, before reading it.
Right. That's totally what it read like. It kind of reminds me. I've been watching YouTube videos of Reddit threads, or I've been listening to them, and it's the computer voice, just reading what's on there.
Oh,
and at one point it said unironically. And I was like, what is that word? And I had to go back and read it and, realized it was unironically. But yeah.
Which I wonder if that's not a word. Is that actually a word? It must be a word. By the way, doesn't that become a little grating when you have the computer voice reading to you?
I mean, it's already at 1.5 speed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm doing it just because the topic seems interesting. But, and I usually listen to it while I'm like doing something else, rotating laundry, folding laundry, something.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I liked when Picard was beaming down by himself. Riker says to him, kind of like, did you grab your jacket? Should you be being down unarmed and alone? And Picard's response is like something like, "Oh, good point. I'll take care."
Yeah, they had to get him in that room with no gun and no protection. And that was, that's another example of it just being held together by twine and popsicle sticks.
Right. I mean, that one makes a little bit more sense. Like, why would a captain of the flagship beam into Starfleet beam into home base with a phaser on his hip just in case?
Because he just realized that there was somebody impersonating a Starfleet admiral who was at the top of the hierarchy of the Federation. That is one reason that you beam down into the lion's den with a fucking phaser. Like, why would you go by yourself at the moment that you realize the top guy of the Federation is being impersonated or controlled or just not himself? He was absolutely certain. He told Riker, "Are you sure?" Riker was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Not him. I bet my life on it."
Right.
He doesn't say that, but that was what the implication is. So, yeah, take a phaser with you and hide it, keister it if you have to, but you're taking a phaser.
Hide it where the Bareil hid
the batleth or the ratleth or catleth or whatever it was.
Yeah.
There's a deep reference.
I mean, not for anybody who's been listening to the podcast. If this is your first episode, you should go back and listen to the episode.
That was Rapture, wasn't it? No, it wasn't Rapture. It was another Deep Space Nine episode.
The DS9 episode with where Kira sees a familiar face.
Yeah. And so they realize that it was a big mistake. She even says it again. You don't bring a phaser to Starfleet Command, and that just seems like a very bad. Nobody's acting like they should be acting.
Right.
So they get to the end of the show that we've already talked about, where they kill the alien, and but they don't stop it in time to send the beacon. Why can't they read the beacon?
I mean, it kind of sounded like a weird, like Morse code satellite thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how it would have been a really interesting ending. Kind of they did the same ending when they had that episode where people are getting stolen off the ship and experimented on.
Oh, yeah.
And
that
they have the same thing where they realize, exactly, that never came back once again. And they kind of had that same creepy ending where, this is ongoing, and there is urgency, and there's ominousness,
ominosity, ominosity,
ominosity. It sounds like a YouTube channel that talks about nothing. You know, like it sounds like one of those vague words that people use to name a YouTube channel
Right.
that ultimately we talk about cloth in this episode.
Talk about the furniture that they're wearing, that they're the measure. What was it?
That they're wearing. Today I'm wearing a 17th century chair.
An ottoman.
Put me down.
I don't know where we were. So, but yeah,
I don't know where we were either. We're at the end. At the end. So the end happens, and yeah, I don't know. It's too bad that they had to kind of water down this idea of conspiracy.
Right.
And it's too bad that Roddenberry, as brilliant as he was, did not have the foresight or was too locked in his own vision of expanding a little bit on Star Trek and not trying to fit it into this tiny little box that ultimately, unfortunately, would have failed. I think it would have ruined Star Trek as we know it if he had tried and kept on this path of nobody fights, there is no interpersonal problems or conflict. It's just aliens and sort of what the original series was.
Right. But I mean, the original series worked with that, and the Next Generation, I'm curious to see like where the first episode is where there's intercrew conflict that's not an outside source.
Well, it's weird because the whole thing between Riker and Troy, there's conflict there. We never explored, so maybe that's why, but there clearly is. He set up some sort of interpersonal thing going on between them.
Right.
And it never gets brought back. In the pilot, he does that. So what was he thinking there?
I mean, well, yeah, I would say that's less conflict and more tension.
We'll never know.
So anyway,
so what did you think? Where did you come down?
It's definitely more dated than I thought that it would be, but I think it hits all the criteria. It's there's the ethical dilemma of whether or not the conspiracy is really going on. And debating how much he should share with his crew.
But is he though? Because so they have the scene on the planet where they say, "Don't tell anybody, nobody, make no record." This conversation never happened. Mm-hmm. The next scene is him telling Troy about it,
right?
And then, so he doesn't really seem to battle with any sort of ethicalness. He's talking to Troy about it, but he still seems resolute in believing this conspiracy.
Right.
And even when confronted, he's not even battling about whether or not the admiral is the admiral. He had a hard no on if he was being impersonated. So where is the dilemma, I guess?
Well, I mean, we've had this kind of issue before with Geordi, where there was absolutely an ethical dilemma being placed, and he already made his choice, about where he stood on it. But we conceded that, there was a dilemma presented in the episode.
I mean, I guess they have the talk with Data and Riker. Can we just stroll up to Starfleet Command and say, what's going on? And they say, why not? It's not really a dilemma. They kind of say, should we do it? Yeah, we should. The end. It's not something that's ever really talked about. So they kind of go through, they go through sort of mini dilemmas, not mini, like M-I-N-I.
Right, miniature. Yeah, teeny ones.
Yeah. Little bitty ones. But they settle them immediately in the same scene. So are they ethical dilemmas, or are they just sort of posing a question, answering it, and then proceeding?
Right. Now, it sounds like you're falling on they're just questions that they're answering.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a arc of ethical dilemma.
Right.
I guess if this had ended differently, whether or not, like if this was the B plot,
right,
and there was something else going on, and Picard is struggling with the idea of, do I believe these people? They're kind of going off the rails a little bit, or at least it seems like they're going off the rails because the conspiracy they're reporting is so widespread. Like, who would believe it? But that didn't happen. They didn't do that. It just seemed like he was on board with it because he trusts them so much. And they had that incident with the Horatio.
Right. That just solidified it even more.
Right.
Well, and then there is the ethical dilemma at the end, too, where Picard says, like, we try not to destroy the life that we meet.
Is that a dilemma, or did you just fire phasers immediately upon seeing
no. Like, his
Muppet?
action does not match his words. But but there was the moral dilemma that was presented in his words. Like when we see new life, we definitely try to diplomatically meet them and not just destroy them on sight.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a series of tiny dilemmas, of the questions being presented, but then they just take a stance on it.
Yeah, they plow through it.
Yeah. Whereas, in the Geordi episode, like it was a dilemma throughout the episode, but Geordi had already taken his stance and he was staying there despite the contrary being presented to him. So, yeah, I don't know.
Also, not really novel science fiction, to be quite honest.
That's true.
I liked the science fiction elements of it. I liked that whole first front-loaded stuff where they're kind of going through it, and it was fun.
Well, and just Invasion of the Body Snatchers is basically what it is.
Or Star Trek 2 or 3 or whichever one it was. Yeah, I don't think I'm coming down on a no that it's a Star Trek.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, regardless of the ethical or moral dilemma, it is not sci-fi presented in a unique way. It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's, and it was done in a movie. So like we don't need to decide whether or not the third one is, because the second one is resoundingly no.
Thank God.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I do think that's something that will probably come up again later, like if we do have, but I think it might also be, if they are mini questions like that, even if they make a decision right away, if there's any kind of a struggle about it, then it would be, yes, there is an ethical, moral dilemma. Like, but if they just pose the ethical or moral question and provide an answer immediately, and they don't discuss it again, and everybody's on the same page, then I think that would be a no.
Yeah, it's a dilemma. Right. It's not just a question. Right. It's like I'm not faced with a dilemma of what should I have for lunch today.
Right. Well, and I mean, just any question about ethics and morality. Like if you can ask an ethical or moral question, and if you have an answer and everybody else agrees, there's no dilemma, and that's why. That's why Geordi's episode was a dilemma, because he was sticking to his guns even though like evidence showed the contrary.
Are you talking about the mother one?
No, I'm talking about the killer one.
Killer.
The shape-shifting alien that turned out to be the dog.
Oh, right. Man, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like he was 100% convinced that she was innocent, even though everyone else was telling him that she was guilty, and like all the evidence said she was guilty.
By the way, that should be the blurb. The one with Geordi, where the shape-shifting alien turned out to be a dog. Tell me you wouldn't watch that.
I mean, but that's a spoiler. Like, and
oh, that is not ground that they have not crossed.
Oh yeah, no, like because you're right. Like that's definitely poor phrasing, because the dog turned out to be the shape-shifting alien. But yeah, like they're searching for a shape-shifting alien, and it turns out to be a dog the entire time. Turns out to be Spot.
That's what place they never went either, is using Data's cat as
anything,
some sort of alien thing.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if they ever do an episode where the mystery turns out to be mundane.
I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out.
Mundane is a tough word, but certainly not action like this one, where they're running through corridors and shooting at Muppets.
Right.
I think this is probably the most action-oriented scene we'll see on NextGen. I don't think it ever gets more intense than this.
Right. Yeah, kind of this episode did not air for a long time in the UK because it was too graphic.
I know, they were having tea before dinner. And that's just, it's much too graphic for...
Yes. Didn't want to spill their tea while watching TNG.
Come at me, England. I just made fun of you for drinking tea. All right, well, should we see what we're going to play?
Let's do it. The original series, Season 1, Episode 30, Operation Annihilate, with an exclamation point.
Sounds like a Naked Gun movie.
Right.
30 episodes in the first season?
Apparently.
Wow.
On another planet, Kirk's brother is killed by amoeba-like aliens, which also infect Spock. But Bones' cure has surprising side effects.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Well,
a lot of this going on. Inhabiting creatures.
Right. Yeah. Let's see what the generator has chosen for us again.
I've been Paul.
I've been Jonathan.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
As you knew.